So the Cardinals, they actually didn't have to make a qualifying offer, as you noted, to Jose Quintana because he was a trade deadline guy. But they did not make a qualifying offer to Corey Dickerson, which is expected. But you noted that they still have some interest in Quintana. How do you handicap that?
I think they really want him back. I think if they can get him back for the right price, I think he would, they want him back. I think he wants to be back here. But he was really just like floored with, being in a playoff race again, packed house, seeing the whole Pujols show. Quintana went from baseball hell in Pittsburgh to St. Louis. And I think he loved it here. I think he would like to be back. I think he's going to get a pretty decent offer. Rather than throwing big money at Rodon and guys like that, if you could get him back for, $6-8 million, that would be a steal.
He fit in so well. I mean, he really, truly did. And it's like the Cardinals brought out the best in him for a lot of reasons, and I think they can help him even more going forward. So I'm a fan of Quintana. I really am. So I'm encouraged that they're feeling good about, or at least going to try to get him back. John, I want to branch out on that a little bit, and you know how I am. I always kind of grab onto something and won't let go, so I'll keep talking about it. But I think we all agree, because Ali Marmol has said it. Leave me out of it. Ali Marmol has said this quite a bit. They need to have more strikeout punch on their pitching staff, and I think that applies to rotation as well. How do they reconcile those things? I mean, they have solid starting pitching, but could use a lot more punch-outs. And even in the bullpen, once you get past a couple of guys, the ball's in play quite a bit. So how do you put that together and get that desired effect?
Yeah, swing and miss is a big deal, and like you said, they don't really have that on the front end or the back end. Now, if Jack Flaherty pitches the way he did down the stretch, he could be that swing and miss guy. He could give the starting staff a horse who could go in there and get you 7, 8, 9 strikeouts a game, something like that. Helsley was phenomenal all season. He's a swing and miss guy. Oddly, as hard as Jordan Hicks throws, he's not really a swing and miss guy. He's not really a strikeout guy. So he throws 103, but there's a lot of ground balls, a lot of contact there. Like you said, Palante, ground ball guy. They need to try to go out and find, a guy who can come in and get you a strikeout with, no outs and a man on third. They need to go find that guy, whether that's via free agency or trade. I think it's more likely to come via trade because the pieces just really aren't there in free agency. And, as we know, this franchise has one of the deepest farm systems in all of baseball. And, you've got to use some of those players to go get you the pieces that you need in your bullpen.
John Denton, one guy that we can kind of merge two areas here because the Cardinals legitimately have some exciting prospects. Walker, Wynn, Tink Hence is right there. And I saw today where Tink Hence, who's their number 6 overall prospect, was named Florida State League Prospect of the Year and the right-handed pitcher Starter of the Year. And that I found that on your Twitter feed, so thank you for that. I think I found it on your Twitter feed. I'm sorry. Let me quit babbling. That's a guy who definitely has strikeout power. I mean, big-time strikeout power. But what's his timetable? And they've been handling him delicately because they want to avoid the possibility of another injury. So what's your read on that situation?
He had a phenomenal season, Bernie. Like you said, a lot of times he was limited to only 4 innings. But I think at one point he had a stretch of like 6 straight outings, 4 innings or more with no earned runs. Phenomenal. A small kid. Think of like a Pedro Martinez, but he throws really hard. Maybe even a Carlos Martinez. But John Mozeliak said at the end of his press conference to wrap up the season, he said this time next year we'll be talking about can Tink Hence come into spring training in 2024 and make the club. Like they think he's a year away from maybe being in that conversation. If he has another year like he did this past season, he'll zip through probably Peoria, Double-A, and then I think he'll be a candidate to make the team maybe next year or, maybe out of the question, but could he be a September ad this coming season? But I would say he's more than likely a year and a half away.
And if you don't mind to stay on the prospects here for a second with our friend John Denton, you had, of course, Jordan Walker and Mason Wynn in the Arizona Fall League exhibition game or All-Star game. I was unaware at the time that I talked about this that Connor Thomas was also on the roster, the left-handed pitcher who doesn't get a lot of buzz, but I know the Cardinals like him, or he wouldn't be in the Arizona Fall League. But if you, what's your read on the timetable for Walker? I'm talking about major leagues and Wynn for that matter.
Bernie, I'm working on a in-depth feature about Jordan Walker, so I got to spend quite a bit of time with him, back earlier in the season. He is a phenomenal kid, like off the charts, like smart. When I tell you that he had an opportunity to go to Duke, was drafted by the Magic, so drafted by the Cardinals, so that tells you the quality of kid. That tells you about the parenting that he gets. He told me, he said, I think every day about what kind of player I'm going to be. He said he wants to be a 5-tool guy. He doesn't want to be a guy who just hits for power. And, if you look at his numbers this season in Springfield, he hit 300 every month but one. And the 1 month he didn't, he hit 290. He only had quote unquote, only 19 home runs. But, the ones that he did hit were light tower power. They were 400 feet. I saw him one night in Springfield get jammed. He hits the ball up around the light towers, 6.4 seconds of hang time, and it went, almost 400 feet, and he hit it off the handle. So he has incredible, he has a body that looks like it was built in a lab somewhere. I mean, 6'5", 250, threw a guy out from the warning track, Bo Jackson style. He has all the components, and I think he's going to be given every shot to make this team in spring training. It could be a 2001 Albert Pujols scenario all over again, where the guy just plays so well that you can't send him down.
Yeah, man, that would be exciting, and that certainly would generate some positive energy in terms of selling tickets and having to find a way to keep all those people back on a packed ballpark that were there for Pujols and Molina this past season. I got to say, John, before you came on, like during the break, I was looking over your Twitter feed to make sure I didn't miss anything that we needed to talk about. And you had that highlight of Mason Wynn making that throw from shortstop. Listen, I don't like to just overstate things. I mean, I do if I'm trying to make a point for effect, I'll overstate things. But I don't know that I've ever seen a shortstop throw like that. Seriously. And maybe I have. Yeah. I don't recall it. I don't. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. Sean Dunston could really get it over there. Maybe not to this level, but I mean, this kid can hit triple digits, Bernie, and he's maybe 170 pounds. He's a small kid. When I talk to him, I mean, I'm 6'5". I towered over him, but man, he can rear back. Even when he bobbles the ball, I think he bobbled the ball the other night. Hit 100 miles an hour throwing it over. I mean, there's a reason why he was considered a pitching prospect and a shortstop prospect at one time. The Cardinals want him to focus only on shortstop, and he showed enough bat this year. He had a lot of doubles, a lot of triples. He was almost they couldn't throw him out when he was stealing bases. So he hit enough that you've got to seriously start thinking about him. Maybe not at the start of this next season, but later in the season, maybe he's a candidate to come up because he's just that gifted.
And are a lot of us right, in your opinion, in the reading of this, is that while we can't rule anything out, that Wynn's presence and his ascension is a reason why we should be skeptical of the Cardinals going in big on a free agent shortstop?
Well, I think the first reason to be skeptical is that they're going to cost $30-something million a year. The Cardinals just don't have a history of donating that kind of, dedicating that kind of money to one player.
Right.
The win thing plays into it, but I think the $250-300 million salary that you're going to have to give a Correa or a Trey Turner, there's some things in the back of my head that says maybe, man, Trey Turner would be so good in St. Louis. Paul Goldschmidt would probably drive in 130 runs if Trey Turner was at the top of that lineup. But, you just look at the Cardinals' history, and they don't usually do that. They don't give $300 million to a guy. I mean, they wouldn't give $240 to Albert Pujols coming off the best 11-year stretch in baseball history. So, as much as it would be nice, and as much as Cardinal fans want to dream about it, I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I was talking about that earlier. All these years later, the largest free agent contract they've ever dished, and boy, this one was an immense success. But still, we're talking about before the 2010 season. That's a long time ago. 7 years, $120 million for Matt Holliday. That tells you all you need to know, right? Just to your point.
Yeah. They just don't do it. If you look at their history, John Mozeliak even said during his season-ending press conference, he said, "We are a build and develop team, and we're always going to be that." So, they did get Nolan Arenado, who's making $35 million, but Colorado's paying a lot of that. They did get Paul Goldschmidt in trades, but they're not the type of franchise that traditionally goes out and signs, that massive guy in free agency. And, that factored into why they didn't trade for Juan Soto. They were never going to give him $500 million or $400 million or whatever it's going to take.
I agree. And the investment in Goldie's obviously paid off so far. John, do you think you think Goldie's definitely going to win the MVP in the National League? It seems like it's shaping up that way, but you never take it for granted, I guess.
Yeah, it's really lining up that way, and it was interesting. We had a kind of a group story that we did with other writers around the country, and even though the Dodgers had two candidates, even though the Mets had two candidates, even though Manny Machado had a great season and got the Padres, to the playoffs, they all thought that Paul Goldschmidt was the MVP. They thought, his lead was so big, even though he had a bad last 6 weeks. He was the best player in baseball until August 25th. August 25th, he had 3 hits, 2 home runs, and 5 RBI against the Cubs. That gave him the lead in the batting average, the lead in the RBIs, and he was 1 back of Schwarber at the time in home runs. And, he kind of fell off after that. But talking to those other writers around the country, they believe that his lead was so big going into that it won't matter. And, it's good for Goldschmidt. He's finished second twice when he could have won it either time. He's finished third. He's finished sixth a couple times. So he's been right there every year, and it looks like he'll finally get over the hump. Getting the Players' Choice Award, getting the Hank Aaron Award, it kind of is leading up to this is finally going to be his year.
John Denton with us. There's a lot of names we can all bandy about in terms of the Cardinals' search for a catcher. Contreras has got a lot of buzz. I know there's doubt that the Cardinals would do that, and the Cubs did make a qualifying offer, so the Cardinals would have to give up, I think, their second highest draft pick or whatever, and that's something that would make it even more unlikely they'll sign him. But there's some other candidates out there, so let's move away from Contreras here and just talk about who do you believe is on the radar? Well,
Tucker Bernhardt's out there. I mean, he can give you a solid guy. That's not gonna excite many Cardinal fans. He's a defensive-minded guy. But I think the play is Oakland and Toronto. If you look, Oakland's number one prospect in their system before coming into this past season was a catcher. I mean, he's going to be their catcher. They've basically traded every veteran off of those 2019, 20, 21 playoff teams. Sean Murphy fits. He was a Gold Glover in 21. He was a finalist for the Gold Glove this year. He's just now hitting the first-year arbitration, so you've got 3 more years of control. He makes a lot of sense. And then you got the 2 catchers in Toronto, Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk. Kirk was an all-star this year. Jansen actually had an .855 OPS this past season, hit 15 home runs. So, those are good options. They're not going to excite a lot of people, but those are good, solid players and proven players who put up big numbers. And, let's face it, Contreras is 30 years old. He's going to demand a 4-year deal, and it's probably going to be somewhere between $18 and $20 million a year. Are you willing to commit that to a guy who's, clearly on the downside of his career?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Kirk, I was surprised. I was doing some research today, went to Baseball Prospectus, and to the degree that people respect, catcher metrics, or I know a lot of people don't, or they're skeptical, and that's okay with me. But I was just really surprised how good of a catcher defensively Kirk is. He really is good. I didn't know what I would find when I went on that mission to learn more, but he's impressive. Now, I think he only caught like 89 or 76 games last year, and he did a lot of DHing. So I'm not sure what that means. But I guess it's nice that you could have a catcher also DH if you want to, you know what I'm saying, want to play somebody else and keep him rested. So I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. I like the way the Cardinals used their DH this past season. They used it to give Arenado a day off. They used it to give Goldschmidt a day off. They used it, to get maybe the best right-handed hitter in the history of the game on their team. So, it's interesting how they're going to approach that situation. I still think, Bernie, they need a left-handed bat. They need a guy who can hit fifth. If Goldschmidt and Arenado don't hit, you're not going to win. And, in the playoffs, they didn't have a five-hitter to protect those guys. They've got to go out and get a guy who can bat fifth, and if he can bat left-handed, that's even better. Now, is that Anthony Rizzo? Is that Josh Bell? Is that Benintendi? All three of those guys are left-handers. They're, kind of all on the Rizzo's definitely on the downside of his career. Benintendi doesn't hit for a lot of power, but he gets on base a ton. Josh Bell could make a lot of sense. His position limitations are there. But, before he was traded from Washington, he was a guy who had a 877 OPS when he was playing for the Nationals. So he's a guy who can still strike fear into pitchers.
Yeah, I like him. And the Giants made the qualifying offer to Jock Peterson today, which would I think would make it less of a chance the Cardinals would pursue him. But do you think maybe before the qualifying offer they had some interest in him?
Yeah, I think so. I think he could be a guy that fits for them. A weird, quirky fact: his brother is the hitting coach in Springfield for the Cardinals. So that would kind of be a reunion. Tiger is his name. He loves Jordan Walker. He thinks Jordan Walker is going to be a star for the next 10, 15 years. If I was Jock Peterson, I would sign that qualifying offer today. I think everybody in baseball was shocked that he got a $19 million qualifying offer. But the Giants have they've been the forerunners of giving a guy maybe a little more for 1 year as opposed to paying him, for several years. So, but it makes you wonder if they're going to pay $19 million to Jock Peterson. Does that mean Rodon is gone? Does that mean they're really serious about going after Aaron Judge?
Yeah, it'll be interesting. John, I think that's all I got for you today, man. I really appreciate reconnecting with you, and thank you for doing it. There's going to be a lot more to talk about as time goes on, but this was a good way to just kind of reset the offseason. One more thing, though, because we haven't spoken since the Cardinals remade the coaching staff. What did you think of the Holiday hiring, and what did you think of Dusty Blake? Those two in particular, and also Turner Ward getting moved up, which I think was an obvious thing to do. What do you make of the moves there?
Yeah, the Turner Ward one was really smart. Everybody in that clubhouse loves Turner Ward. Paul Goldschmidt's been with him since they were in Double-A Mobile, Alabama, a bunch of years ago, and a lot of people think that Turner Ward is just a hitting guru because the one thing about him is he's so passionate. Ollie Marmol said he lives and dies with every pitch. It's like he's there in the batter's box with the hitters. So I think that the Cardinals could see a huge jump there with Turner Ward. Matt Holliday just makes so much sense. Matt said he's always wanted to get back in it. Since the day he retired, he wanted to be back in Major League Baseball. But he's been a father and been around his family a lot, and he said you don't know when jobs like this are going to come open. Him and Ollie lived close to one another when they were in Jupiter back in the day. Their families hung out all the time. It makes sense. Just look at what Matt Holliday did with Matt Carpenter last year. Like, he helped him refine his swing. That just shows you the potential and the baseball IQ that Matt Carpenter has. And Ollie is really strong on Dusty Blake. He thinks in 3 years, 5 years from now, that people are going to look back on Dusty Blake as being one of the best young minds in pitching. He's a guy who really gets it. He was a guy who was a good pitcher himself. He's been successful at every level, and he is all about the analytics. He's all about the video. So he's a guy who the players trust. Adam Wainwright loves him already. I think they did really well with those three hires.
Yeah, I'm with you, my man. Listen, John, probably won't talk to you before Thanksgiving, which is what I believe 2 weeks from today. I can never get that straight, but that's my best guess anyway. But so listen, I appreciate you for, first of all, your great coverage of the Cardinals, but also just for being personally kind to me and coming on the show. And so I hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving, you and yours.
You're the best, Bernie. You're the best, Bernie. Thanks so much. I appreciate your friendship, and take care.
All right, that's our friend John Denton, MLB.com, at John Denton 555. And Jim Hewer, I always wondered about Jock Peterson, but I think this makes it less of a possibility they'll reach out for him. And I don't know that they were all that hepped up on him anyway. He hits right-handed pitching well, but not as well as he used to. I think some people were surprised the Giants made him a qualifying offer. However, the Giants' recent history under their management team is that they're pretty aggressive about making qualifying offers to their own players. So we'll see what happens there. Real quick, because we don't have time to get into this, but I'm continuing to look at more and more catchers because the thing fascinates me, and we've talked a lot about Contreras. We talked a lot about Sean Murphy. And there's more about Contreras to get into, but not today. I was really pleasantly surprised when I looked at Alejandro Kirk as the Toronto catcher and where he is defensively on the scale of catchers. And it's funny. I was reading that online forum at STL today, and there's all these people on there trashing him because he's 5'8". And he weighs 245. He's got an unusual body, but people are just like, this guy's a joke. He's no athlete. He can't play defense. He'll never be able to hold up. This guy's a joke,
Mm-hmm.
And because people are stupid, so of course there's going to be comments like that. In terms of, let me get this real quick. In terms of pitch framing, getting more strikes, strikes above average, 5th best in baseball, number 5. As far as blocking skills last season, number 6 in baseball. His throwing was graded out at 8th best in the majors. And the takeoff rate, which means steal attempts, was around 20th, which is not bad because we're talking 45, 50 catchers. But listen, when you're in your top 5 framer, top 6 in blocks, and top 8 in throwing, you're a pretty good catcher. You're a real good catcher, actually. And so he also can hit. He had 3.8 Fangraphs WAR last season. He's a real good candidate. Real quick, the guy that I don't share the enthusiasm for that people continue to bring up is Christian Vasquez. I respect him. I totally respect him. But in a lot of the things I read or hear, it's like, well, Yachty likes him. They're both from Puerto Rico, and Yachty likes him. This sounds kind of rude. I really don't care if Yachty likes him. I don't know what that has to do with anything. Just because Yachty endorses him, does that mean it's the best they can do? Of course not. And compared to Kirk, and even compared to a couple other catchers out there, again, as we go along, we'll get into this throughout the out season. But Christian Vasquez this past season, 20th in framing, rated 20th overall in fielding runs above average for catcher, 20th, whereas Alejandro Kirk is 3rd. He was 3rd in the number 1 catcher metric, which is the bottom line of how good you are defensively. So Kirk was 3rd. Vasquez was 20th. He's also 23rd in framing, and he was 20th in blocking. And he's a below-average hitter the last 2 years. So why are so many people fired up about this? Can anyone explain that to me?
Kirk's a better player. You can just put it out there. Yeah,
I just don't. I don't know why the standards are so low among media. And I don't want to. I'm not blasting fans, but I think a lot of fans pick up on what the media writes or says, and Christian Vasquez has just been overhyped. He's just not as good as whatever the reputation is. And people say, well, Bernie, he won, he was the catcher that won the World Series. Yeah, so was Wilson Contreras as a rookie in 2016. So 2 can play that game. All right, I'll shut up.